what people do in Southeast Asia. So there are things like whether or not you want to send a DTMF code before when you press the push to talk. We don't do that here. So it's like, huh? Combine that with manuals that are the typical first generation translation of, you can't understand it, and you wind up with a problem. As you're going to see, it's not really any different than the Japanese radios. And then we're going to go through Chirp, which is a software product that for programming radios. The nice thing about Chirp is that it works across a wide range of radios. So you don't have to buy a separate piece of software or use a separate piece of software for each radio, and you can copy your files from one radio to another instead of having to enter them, each way.
John?
Yes?
Does the program also work for the Japanese radios?
Yes.
Oh,
It works. You'll see it works for a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. First, the third thing that's sometimes a problem for people trying to program their radios is that they don't understand repeaters. And we see this a lot. Is there anybody who wants a quick review of what a repeater, of what's happening with the repeater and what has to be programmed? Yes? Georgie, I see your hand going up and down, or you're just playing with your antenna? Okay. Anybody want a quick review? Going once? Going twice? Okay. So I don't need that.
You're going to cover odd splits
I wasn't planning on it, but I can, as long as I can read the manual. For those of you who are interested, I've been doing more and more things in LibreOffice. LibreOffice is free. It's pretty much where Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office was in about 2003, before they went to that stupid ribbon bar. It's free. It works. It doesn't have lots and lots and lots of crap added to it that slows everything down. So, just bear that in mind. And it reads and writes Word files. Okay, so the first and most important thing to know about these Chinese radios, especially the Baofeng, is this site, miclor.com. This is some people, some crazies who have gotten together, and they have put together a site with everything you might ever want to know about one of these radios. It's absolutely crazy.
But only Baofeng?
Huh?
Only Baofeng?
Mostly Baofeng, but he's got some of the Wouxons on there. And a lot of these radios seem to be, the actual computer and the programming are basically the same for all of them, which implies that basically it's one company or one group of people built some software and everybody's using it. Either they all stole it from each other or else they just sold it to each other. But either way, if you learn the Baofeng, you'll know pretty much how to use the Wouxon and the TYT and what was the one that you came up with, Paul?
Wouxon?
Wouxon, yeah. So
Can you
anyway,
spell the Miklor? I can't read.
Miklor. And we'll put this up on our website. Afterwards, John will put up the presentation. And these guys are, as they point out, they are not a dealer or a manufacturer. The only money they're making is from ads, or if you want to donate. So, for example, they have ads over here in this on the right side of some of their pages. Okay, this is to give you an idea. This is the table of contents for all the information they have about the Baofeng. I mean, as the old joke goes, we'll ask you to memorize it, but just to give you an idea of all of the stuff they have. Some of the really important things, like they have a greatly enhanced user's manual. It really is pretty well done. They have a detail about the keypad layout and functions, how to program via the keypad. Excuse me. Menu definitions. Remember I said some of these things are not the stuff that we deal with. This explains it and says, yeah, okay, this one you don't need, this one you do need, etc. So it's really quite complete.
Are all those manuals on the web, or do you have?
Yeah, this is what they have on the web.
Okay.
This is what they have on the web. And one of the keys that you'll find on their site is the Baofeng, the Chinese Radio Documentation Project. A bunch of people have gotten together and they've rewritten the manuals. Okay, this is actually It's a link from the Miclor site to this one, but you know, it doesn't matter, you'll get it. But these guys have written a rather good manual. All right, here's an idea, an example of what they tell you about each menu item. The kind of level of detail that they give you about each menu item. As opposed to what's in the manual where you can't really understand, you know, what it is. I'm just trying to give you an idea. This is, you know, this is the level of detail that you're talking about with the stuff that's on that Miclor site. And again, most of the stuff that they have is applicable to the Wouxon, is applicable to the TYT, it's applicable to the, what was it again? Palcone, whatever, Calpung, whatever. Okay, so there are a couple of commonly used menu items that you're going to use to program one of these radios for the typical repeater. Lo and behold, they're the same kinds of things that we're programming in any other radio. Well, the squelch, what level of squelch do you want? Squelch just says, at what point do I allow a signal to break into the speaker? You know, if you're in an area that's very noisy, radio noisy, you might want a high squelch. If you're in an area that's low radio noise, you want a low squelch. Transmit power, pretty standard, right? And this is the menu item, the Baofeng. So menu item 0 on the Baofeng is the squelch. Menu item 2 is the transmit power. Menu item 11 is the receive CT-CSS. In other words, the receive PL. If you remember, in most of the Chinese radios, that's typically called T-squelch, TSQL. And what it is if you want to set a PL code so that you don't hear anything unless the repeater is sending a PL code. Most of the repeaters around here do transmit a PL code, but most of us don't bother to program our radios for it because there's nothing else around here that's going to break our squelch. The exception being the Fairfield repeater, where you really want to receive code because there's another repeater on the same frequency somewhere around Atlantic City, and even though it's 70 or 80 miles, it's 70 or 80 miles across the ocean, and you hear them real well. So you put in the receive PL, and that way it only opens your speaker when it's the Fairfield repeater talking to you and not the repeater in Atlantic City. 13 is transmit CT-CSS, or transmit PL. That's the standard one. You know, when we say our repeater is PL 100, that's what you have to put in. It's the PL that's going to be sent out when you transmit. Standard classic repeater. Shift. Okay, on your radio, are you transmitting at a lower frequency than you're receiving? So our repeater is 146.655. We transmit on 146.055. We transmit on 146.055. That's a negative shift. The Norwalk repeater is 146.475. You transmit on 147.475, so that's a positive shift. No different than anything you have to program into any of the Japanese. The offset, they do it a little bit differently than the Japanese, and that the Japanese kind of know if you're in UHF, they know that you're setting your shift in megahertz, and if you're in UHF, you're setting your shift in megahertz. If you're in VHF, you're setting your shift in kilohertz. They just do it in megahertz. So if you're in VHF, you might be setting a shift amount of like 0.6 megahertz. That's 600 kilohertz. That's the standard shift. But same basic concept. Two other things that are different. Remember what I said about the flat structure, and there are no extra buttons that you have to press as part of the programming. Once you've set everything up, if you want to save it to memory, you go to item 27 and hit the button and it's saved. As opposed to the Japanese, where typically there's buttons on the keypad that you have to press to save. Here, it's all done through the menu. So you go to the thing that says save it, or if you want to delete out the contents of memory, you go to the thing that says delete. Very flat structure. Just a couple of things to point out. When you're actually using the radio, if you want to change the power setting, right there on the spot temporarily, you just tap the pound key, and it changes the power setting. So I'm on the Stanford repeater. I happen to be standing right next to the Stanford repeater. Tap, I'm going to go to low power. You know, when I move away, tap, and I go back to high power. On the typical Japanese radio, you have some sort of a button combination for reverse, so that you're listening to the input of the repeater instead of listening to the output of the repeater. And that, on these, you tap the scan key, and it reverses it so you can do that. The difference is on the Japanese radios, there's typically a button for that, a specific button for that. Remember these, what I said, these things are designed for commercial purposes. So they do wideband and narrowband. Ham radio is wideband, is considered wideband. There was a time when we were considered narrowband. We haven't changed, the definition of wideband and narrowband have changed. So ham radio is wideband as far as these things are concerned. Any questions, anybody?
Why was that important to note, John?
Just because it's confusing a lot of people. There's a lot of confusion in the ham community. The FCC mandated narrow banding on most radios. It became effective, was it last year or the year before, last January? And a lot of hams are very confused because they thought that they were going to have to get rid of all their ham equipment, they were going to have to get rid of all their repeaters and everything else, and it just went on and on with people. No, no, no. Narrow band is for commercial. It's not for us. So just want to make that clear. Okay. Then there are the menu items. All right. So menu item 7, dual watch, TDR. These radios do dual watch, meaning that you can monitor 2 different frequencies at once. Okay. Again, it's very similar on the Wouxon. If you put it into monitoring one frequency, it only shows you the one frequency. On these radios, on the Baofeng, if you tell it to monitor only one frequency, it's still showing you both frequencies, but it only ever monitors the one. Most of us are not used to having a radio that monitors 2 frequencies at once, so it gets confusing. We have to be careful with some of these Japanese, or some of these Chinese radios. On the Baofeng, for example, and I think also on the TYT, if you're monitoring 2 frequencies, and it hears something on the other frequency, you've got this thing set to A, right? I'm set to the Stanford repeater, and I'm monitoring the Norwalk repeater on the B side. They're called the A side and the B side. So I'm on the A side, I'm monitoring Stanford, that's where I've set myself to transmit. I'm monitoring Norwalk on B, it hears something on B, and it switches the transmit side. So the next time you press the push to talk, you're going to be transmitting on the Norwalk repeater, not on the Stanford repeater. So you have to be careful about that. Item 34 kind of overrides that. So you can say, on item 34, you can say, if I'm monitoring 2 frequencies, I always want to transmit on frequency, either the A side or the B side. So if it hears something on the B side, it'll play what's on the B side and it'll go back to A. So that's a better kind of thing. One thing to be careful of, one thing I'll say is, if you're not used to monitoring 2 sides, 2 radios, or 2 frequencies, if you're new to this in general, turn off the TDR, monitor only 1. It will confuse the bloody hell out of you. Okay? It's an interesting feature, but it's real annoying because both sides are coming out of the same speaker, so you don't really know what's happening. When you get something like a mobile radio that can do 2 sides at once, those usually have 2 speakers in them. And your ear can tell you which side you're listening to at any given time. So unless you're really used to doing this kind of thing, turn off TDR, monitor 1 side. All right, another one that's actually, it's not so what the fuck, but anyway, limit transmission time to XX seconds. So literally, if you set this to 60 and you push to talk and you start talking, at 60 seconds you're going to hear a beep, but all of a sudden you're not transmitting anymore. It's there to protect the radio so you don't overheat the radio. Some of you who may have some of the Japanese radios, particularly the ICOMs, you know that with the ICOM, you have to buy the $400 asbestos oven mitt so you can use your, you know, so you can use your radio. This handles that by having this setting that says, I'm gonna shut off the transmission after a minute. All of these walkie-talkies, all these handy-talkies, they're all built for short transmissions. They're not suitable for long 3-5 minute soliloquies. Okay, they want a short transmission. This protects the radio. All right, voice, all of them have the ability, as you go from menu item to menu item, to say in voice what the menu item is. And you can have it off, you can have it in Chinese, or you can have it in English. The English is heavily accented, but, you know, I find it annoying, you know, especially if I have to go through a bunch of things to get from position 2 to position 34. It's like, oh, shut up, you know, I just turn it off. All right, ANI ID. This is some sort of coded signal that they use in China for an alarm, you know, that they give to the police. They can send out something and it'll start spewing forth a noise. So in case they have to find one of their policemen, just leave it as it is. Don't touch it. S code sends a DTMF code on transmit or end of transmit. Do we all know what a DTMF is? Huh? Okay. We don't do that in the United States. In some places they do.
The commercial radios on the Motorola.
No, I mean the ham, but the ham doesn't.
No, there are some repeaters that you could send the DTMF to override the PL.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. We don't normally use it. I don't know if anybody uses it around here, so just leave it. PTTID. That works with this thing. It's whether or not you're sending a code at the beginning or end. We're not sending those codes. PTTLT, which is a delay before sending this thing that we don't send. So just leave it, okay? BCL, busy channel lockout, prevents transmitting when a channel is busy. We're not used to doing those kinds of things. Those kinds of things often are on police radios. They're on specialized things. Maybe we ought to more often. We wouldn't have people stepping on each other. But if you want to use it, I have mine set to off. Alarm mode is some sort of an alarm, no idea what. We don't use it. You can't turn it off, so set it to sight, and it just doesn't seem to do anything.
What are the other options?
I don't remember offhand. Okay.
Well, they transmit something which nobody understands, right?
Yeah,
The other
I
options,
don't know.
That's where you don't want.
I don't know what the other options are offhand. I'll look it up for you.
Tone and code.
Huh?
Tone
and code, yeah.
Item was 15.
Yeah.
Step or menus 15. Could we use that? Do you know the code to send that alarm?
I don't.
Because you know how insert we did the feedback thing?
Yeah.
Could
It's an
we
interesting
use that alarm thing
I don't know. Let's see if we can find out how to trigger it. I don't know.
to
That's
to
an
use the
interesting-
feedback to set that? Of course, everybody's not using those radios.
Right. We learned an interesting thing in our, going off the topic, in our search and rescue drill in December. Let's say you've got somebody who's part of your team and they're not responding, and you're looking for them, okay? Switch everyone else to a different frequency. Take two radios that are on the frequency that everyone's been using. So we've been on the Stanford repeater. We've been operating on the Stanford repeater. We're trying to call Paul. Paul's not responding. Okay? We have people out looking for Paul. So you take everybody who's looking for Paul, you have them go to a Norwalk repeater. You take two radios that are set to the Stanford frequency, you hold them up next to each other and you hit the push to talk. What are you going to get? You're going to get a loud feedback squeal. If Paul's radio is still on, and if he's still tuned to Stanford, that feedback squeal is going to come out of his radio. People out in the field may hear it, and they may, that'll help them find him. Apparently, this is a common technique that the firemen use. If they can't find a fireman, they do that. It helps them locate the fireman. Just something to know. So what Steve is suggesting is maybe that code could be used for that purpose, because it does some sort of an alarm. If you can trigger an alarm off the guy's radio, then all of a sudden his radio is going to be going, you know, whatever, that's a way, possibly a way to find it. Okay, alarm mode, again, just set it to sight. Squelch tail elimination. It will actually squelch everything after you release the PTT for some period of time. Apparently they use this in China. They don't. We typically don't use this here. Here we want to hear the courtesy tone. Right? If you have a squelch tail on for a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, your radio is squelched after you release the push to talk. You won't hear the courtesy tone, and you may not hear if somebody is, you know, jumps right in as soon as you release the PTT. So I said leave it. This is a similar kind of thing. Again, leave it. Squelch tail delay. All this stuff is about squelch tails. Leave it. So turn it off. Don't touch it, because we don't want a squelch tail. So turn it off. Roger sends an end of transmission tone after push to talk release. Again, not the kind of thing we do. It's like a courtesy tone. Essentially, your radio is sending out a courtesy tone. Generally, we here in the US don't do that. Although it's not a bad thing. I tell you, I find if I've been on repeaters for a while and then I'm talking simplex with somebody, it really throws me off, because I don't know when they stop talking, you know. So it's not a bad thing to do, but people don't usually do that here. And the one to be careful of, resets all the settings and erases memory. Oops. You know, it will confirm with you if you do it. If you go to reset, it'll say, you know, like, do you really want to do this? The Wouxon actually goes one step further, and you have to set a code that you punch in on the keypad. So you go to that reset setting on the menu, and you hit the button to make it happen, and it says, all right, now put in the code that I really want to make sure you mean. So just be careful of that one. Okay, so the basic flow of programming, manual programming. Remember, we want to learn how to do the manual programming, because you never know when you're going to be up on Cape Cod and you discover there's a nice repeater there that you want to use, but you haven't pre-programmed it. The basic flow of programming is that you're going to hit the menu button, and then you're going to use the up or down arrow keys to get to the menu item you want, and then you're going to wind up hitting the menu button again to actually get to the place where you're going to make the change. So let's follow this. I've got my radio. I happen to have it set to 146.520 on the A side and 447.125 on the B side. Those are the regular calling channels. Notice on most of these radios you program from the A side only. It's only going to look at what's on the A side of your display when you go to program. So just remember that. So I'm here. I decide I want to program something. I'm going to hit menu. When I hit menu, it's going to take me to the first menu item. So now I'm at the first menu item. Now I'm going to hit the up button, and I'm going to go from menu item 1 to menu item 2. And if I keep hitting the up button, you know, I'm going to get to 3 and 4, and eventually I'm going to get to 12, and finally I'm going to get to 13. Let's say 13 is the item I want to program. So I've hit menu, and then I just hit the up or down arrow to get me to the menu item I want to program. In the Yaesu VX series, there's a FW button, and then there's something on the 6, or the 0 button, which is the menu, and then you turn the dial to get to the menu item you want. Really not any different.
You can also just enter the numbers correctly.
Yes, you can also enter, if you know that it's item number 13 you want to program, you hit menu and then hit 1-3. That's if you know which item you want to program. Okay, so I'm at item 13, transmit CTCSS. That's the one I've decided I want to program. I hit menu again, and now it puts me, you notice the arrow changed? Now I can change this item. And then I hit the up or down keys to move to where I want. In this case, it's the CTCSS tone. The various allowed values are programmed in, so I just hit up or down till I get to the value I want. When I get to the item I want, I hit menu again. Now the arrow is switched back up here. I've finished programming this item. Now I can do one of two things. I can use the up or down keys to move to a different menu item if I want to program something else. Or I can hit the exit button and I'm out of programming. So, menu puts me into the selector, into the menu of items I can program. Up or down to move to the item I want. Menu again. Now I can actually set the value I want. Menu, exit. Menu, menu, up or down buttons, menu, exit. And that's really it. You just have to know what you want to program.
That would be if you're programming a simplex figure. Don't you have to put in the in and the out?
Yeah, I'm just showing an example.
Okay.
Okay, so if I want to program a repeater, remember you do it on the A side. When you program a repeater, you have to be in VFO mode. That's standard. Same, no different than on any other radio. Remember, the radios have VFO mode where you're tuning a frequency, where they have memory mode where you're retrieving something you've saved in your memory, right? Everybody, right? Right, Neil? I see you grinning there, right?
What does
So-
VFO stand for?
Variable frequency oscillator.
Oh.
Because in the old days, that's how, I guess they still done it this way.
Yeah, it was
That was on the test, you should know that. No, it was, I don't know, was it on the technician test? It just means dial. Think of it as VFO mode is like the dial on your car radio. You can tune up or down, right? The memory mode is like the preset buttons. Once you've preset a frequency, you just press that and that frequency comes up. VFO is just tuning, memory is recalling a preset. Okay? So I'm in VFO mode. I decide I want to program something. For example, if I wanted to program in the Stanford repeater, I would set my radio to 146.655. Whoops. Oh, I got the tuning steps wrong. All right. Make believe I set it to. One other thing that these do, which again, most of the Japanese radios do, you can set your tuning step. In other words, every time I hit the button, am I tuning 2.5 kilohertz? Am I tuning 5 kilohertz? Am I tuning whatever? I happen to have this set for 20 kilohertz. I don't know why. Let me just change that. Anybody? Oh, step right there. Okay, so now, 146.655, right? I'm in VFO mode, I've gone to 146.655. Now I want to change the shift. I want to set the shift. I want to set the offset. I want to set the PL, the transmit PL. So I go to menu, and I start going up until I get to item number 13, which is the transmit CTCSS. I press menu again, and now I can adjust it. In our case, to 100 hertz. Okay, anybody need time? Everybody okay? Then I hit menu again. So I've got my CTC at my PL set. I keep going up, and I find the shift. I press menu. The shift on our repeater is minus, so I set it for a minus shift. Press menu. Keep going up. There's my offset. Is next. I press menu, and what you can do on the offset is you can just punch it in. So 00600, or you can press those buttons to get there. 00600, that's 0.6 megahertz, that's 600 kilohertz, that's the shift on our repeater. Whoops, damn it. I didn't press menu again. Sorry. You're gonna give me a hard time on this. press menu, so now I've got my shift is set. What else do I have to do for a repeater? The other thing I really have to do is save it. Once I've set those, so I go to number 27, which is memory channel. I set in the memory channel that I want, whatever it is I want, and when I press menu, it's going to save it. That's really it.
But did they change, because on my Baofeng, you had to do the transmit and receive separately. It wouldn't save an offset. So I don't, whether, have they changed it?
I guess
Because at least the original ones, you had the offset if you were just using it in the VFO mode, you could store it at offset, but when you saved it in the memory channel, you had to do them separate.
I don't know, Paul, do you?
For an odd split, not for a
Yeah, that's certainly,
No, it was
certainly one of the ways.
for anything, you had to go through twice. But
Having that feature of doing it that you could have two different channels, you could have one UHF, one VHF. You could transmit on UHF and receive on VHF.
Yeah, if it's an odd or crossband split, that's the way you do a crossband split, but,
Yeah.
which is no different again than what you have to do in the Japanese radios. We program in, on the an odd split or a non-standard split, on VHF your split is normally 600 kilohertz. If you're programming in an odd split, like Norwalk repeater is an odd split, it's 1 meg. One of the ways to do it on the Japanese radios is you program in the transmit side, then you separately program in the receive side, but when you're saving the second one, you hold down some other button when you're pressing it, and that way it puts it in the same channel. That's one way of doing it. One of these radios can handle a repeater, or they can handle an odd split where one side is VHF, one side is UHF. Now, if you have an odd split like the Norwalk repeater, you don't have to do it that way for one of these radios. You can just program in the odd split. So for the Norwalk repeater, if I was programming the Norwalk repeater, I'm just going to tell it that the offset is 1 meg. Bing, done. I don't have to first program the send side, and then first program the receive side, then program the send side, and then make sure I press some odd combination of buttons that make sure that the two get combined together. On this, I can just program in 1 meg, bing, I'm done.
Actually, the way the original Baofeng worked was you would program the receive side, I forget which order it is.
Yeah, whatever.
It automatically did everything for you. It was just that you had to hit both
How many of you
buttons.
have an old Baofeng like that? So let's not worry about it, okay? Yes.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but you might want to point out that there's some things that you cannot program
Yeah,
manually.
I'm gonna get there, yeah. Now, one other thing about these radios, the ones that are sold in the US, they are supposedly all sold so that they will only work on the ham bands. There's a way to make them work beyond the ham bands, because, for example, this radio is 138 megahertz to 172 megahertz, and I think 400 megahertz to 520 megahertz. But you can only do that if you have the cable and the programming software. So it's a ham band only radio unless you unlock it. Same thing is true of the Wouxons. The FCC wouldn't let them sell it in the US unless they did it that way.
Okay, originally the first ones approved by the FCC, you could program for the Marine band.
And by the way, back in 1802, these radios, Fred, no one has one of those radios. We don't care.
It's 2 years old.
I don't care. You're confusing people. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that's the basics of programming one of these radios. You just got to do it a couple of times by hand to get used to it, but it's really no different than the Japanese radios, and in some regards it's a little bit simpler. For example, on the ICOM, the 4 things we programmed in, at least on the ICOM 91AD, 2 of the items are in the menu structure, And the other two items have specific special buttons that you have to press on the keypad. So it gets more confusing. This way, everything is there in the menu, you can find it. And like I said, the stuff that we don't use, don't use it. Okay? There are a couple of items you want to set to a default, like turn it off. Other than that, don't use it. Leave it. Don't worry about it if you don't know what it is. Should we take a break? It's,
Oh, yeah.
what? We didn't hear, Lena. Let's take a break.
Paul, where are you?